The sun was unforgiving that Wednesday afternoon in Lagos, the kind of heat that melted tar and slowed time. Jane shifted her tote bag from one shoulder to the other as she walked down Isaac John Street in Ikeja GRA, sweat forming a stubborn line down her back. She had just completed an audit at a private media firm, one that had refused to switch on the AC throughout her 3-hour visit, and her head throbbed from numbers, noise, and negligence. All she wanted was food, not fast food, not one of those glitzy restaurants that serve tiny foreign meals on oversized plates. She wanted something that reminded her of home, something spicy, something real. She turned into a street she rarely used and found herself facing an old building painted a tired cream color. The signage above read, "Tasty Delight, Local Meals. Real taste, hidden recipes." She'd passed it a few times, but never paid attention. There was nothing particularly inviting about it, just wooden benches outside, a rusted gate, and faded curtains over the door. But today, the aroma pulled her in. Thick, smoky, with a kind of scent that stirred forgotten memories. Goat meat, definitely. Some pepper soup, maybe. And something else. Something hard to name, but undeniably mouth-watering. Her stomach growled. She hesitated. Her instincts poked at her, a slight unease in her chest. Something didn't feel quite right, but she was too tired to care. She pushed open the door. Inside, it was dim and surprisingly cool. 2 ceiling fans groaned overhead. The place had a strange mix of cleanliness and clutter. The tiled floor was mopped, but cracked. The tables were wiped, but the corners held grime. In the far end sat an old transistor radio, humming softly with the voice of a local preacher. "Good afternoon, Ma," came a voice. A girl in her early 20s with small tribal marks stepped forward. "Table for one," Jane nodded. "I'm Sade," the girl said, handing her a menu card that had clearly survived fire, flood, and famine. "We have egusi, ogbono, rice and beans, fried stew, and today's special, goat meat pepper soup. Very hot, Ma," Jane smiled. "Give me that. Fufu or rice?" "Rice, and cold water, please." As Sade walked off, Jane settled into the plastic chair and glanced around. 3 other customers were there. One, an elderly man, eating slowly, stared blankly at his food like he was chewing memory. Another, a middle-aged woman, nodded at Jane. The third, a slim man in jeans, had already finished and was sipping a bottle of Sprite. A door opened behind the counter. A tall man in an apron walked out, carrying a steaming tray. He was muscular, bald, and his eyes darted around like a hunted animal. He scratched his armpit twice as he leaned to whisper something to Sad. Jane watched the motion absent-mindedly. Her food arrived within minutes. The rice looked perfect, fluffy and steaming. The pepper soup was thick, red, and aromatic. Goat meat floated generously in it. She dug in. The first spoon burned her throat, in a good way. The peppery hit made her eyes water. She smiled. Yes, this was it. This was what she needed. Halfway through the meal, she paused. A strange feeling crept over her. Not nausea, not exactly, but something heavy sat in her chest. Her throat itched, her tongue tingled. The meat tasted unusual. It was rich, but the flavor was almost too earthy. There was something raw about it. She reached for her water. Then the dizziness came, a spinning, a tight knot in her belly. "I'm sorry. Where's the restroom?" she asked hurriedly. "Behind that curtain," Sade pointed. Jane rushed past the counter and into a narrow passage. At the end was a creaky door. The toilet smelled faintly of antiseptic and something older, less clean. She bent over the sink. Nothing came out. but her stomach churned, like it was fighting something demonic. Then she looked up and froze. A gust of wind from a nearby fan pushed aside the thin curtain that separated the restroom from the kitchen. Through the gap, she saw it. A large silver bowl on a table. Next to it, a blade and clumps of something black, short and curly. It looked like hair, not head hair. Then she saw the cook. He had lifted his armpit and was carefully shaving into the bowl. Jane stumbled back. Her mouth hung open, her throat dry. Her heart pounded in her ears. She didn't scream. She couldn't. The shock was like a noose around her voice. She rushed out of the restroom, grabbed her bag, and walked straight for the exit. "Madam, go finish your food," Said called. Jane didn't reply. She burst into the street, gasping like someone who had just escaped suffocation. The heat outside slapped her face, but felt like freedom. She bent beside a tree and vomited everything. Every grain of rice, every drop of soup. The taste of shame and horror clung to her tongue. Jane couldn't sleep that night. She'd scrubbed her tongue 3 times, drank 2 full bottles of bitter lemon, and even brushed her teeth with salt and charcoal. But none of it erased the lingering aftertaste. Not just on her tongue, but in her soul. Armpit hair, shaved into a bowl. Her stomach turned again. She had eaten it, or something made with it. And the way her body reacted, the nausea, the dizziness, it wasn't normal. Something was wrong with that place. By morning, her curiosity outweighed her disgust. She paced around her tiny one-room apartment in Surulere, wringing her hands. She wanted to let it go, just block it out. People got food poisoning all the time, right? But something kept replaying in her head. The way the cook's eyes darted, the strange silence in the restaurant, the almost trance-like way the other customers ate their food, especially that elderly man who stared like he was remembering something painful. Jane sat down, picked up her phone, and typed into Google, "Why would someone cook with armpit hair?" Nothing useful came up, just blogs about strange voodoo practices and a Reddit thread from years ago about hair being a spiritual ingredient in some ancient rituals. Then one comment stood out. Hair, especially from the armpits or pubic area, carries strong personal energy. In dark rituals, it's sometimes used to bind a person, to manipulate their will, or trap their essence in a cycle. Jane's eyes widened. Cycle? She thought about the other customers, eating slowly, blank stares, almost robotic. She picked up her bag. She was going back, the return to tasty delight. This time, she didn't go alone. She called her friend John, a street-smart guy she met during NYSC, who now worked as a freelance videographer. "I know this sounds crazy," she said over the phone, "but I need you to follow me to a restaurant. Something's off there." "You mean like expired meat?" "Number, I mean like juju kind of off?" Pause. "I'm listening." She told him everything. There was silence. Then John said, "Okay, I'm in." An hour later, they met near the junction and walked in together. Jane wore a wig, glasses, and a large scarf to cover her face. John had a small GoPro camera hidden in a buttonhole on his shirt. The same girl, Sade, was there. She smiled as they entered. "Welcome. Table for 2?" Jane kept her head down and nodded. Saad handed them the same faded menu. John ordered a goosey and EBA. Jane ordered nothing. She only asked for water. As they sat, Jane whispered, "Keep your camera facing the counter. Don't move too much." The restaurant was almost empty today. Only one customer sat at the back, a woman eating alone. As they waited, the cook emerged again. Same man, same eyes, same armpit scratch. Then something new happened. A door opened at the far end, one Jane hadn't noticed before. An old woman stepped out. She was bent over, wrapped in a faded green wrapper, her eyes milky with age but sharp. She stared straight at Jane. Something about her gaze made Jane's skin crawl. Then the woman turned, walked slowly toward the counter, and whispered something to the cook. He looked back at Jane, then at John. She could feel it. Their cover was blowing. "Let's go," she whispered. "Now?" "Yes." They stood. John faked a phone call. "Babe, your brother has been rushed to the hospital. Let's move." They exited swiftly. Outside, Jane finally exhaled. "Did you get anything?" "I got video of the guy scratching his armpit again, and that old woman staring at you like you're tomorrow's soup." They both laughed nervously, but the laugh didn't last long. Later that evening, Jane was walking home alone. The street was quiet. She had just bought suya from a roadside seller and was about to cross the road when she felt a hand on her shoulder. She spun around. It was the old woman from the restaurant. Jane staggered back. "How did you—" "Shh," the woman said. Her voice was low and graveled, like dry leaves rustling. "Leave that matter alone," the woman said. "Don't dig what you're not ready to see." Jane's mouth was dry. What is that place?" The old woman looked around. "It's not a restaurant. It's a shrine disguised as a kitchen. Every meal there is a contract." "A contract?" "They feed you. They take something from you." Jane's legs trembled. "What did they take from me?" The woman didn't answer. She simply said, "Don't go back. You may not return next time." Then she vanished into the alleyway. Jane stood frozen for several minutes. The suya in her hand had gone cold. Jane couldn't sleep. The old woman's words replayed in her mind over and over again. "It's not a restaurant. It's a shrine disguised as a kitchen. Every meal there is a contract." Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the silver bowl, the blade, the damp curls, the eyes of the cook, and the woman ghost-like appearing and disappearing into the night, like smoke. By morning, her fear had morphed into something stronger, determination. She wasn't just a victim, she was a witness. And now, she was going to become a whistleblower. Uncovering the ritual, John arrived at her house around 9 a.m. Camera bag slung over his shoulder. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. "I can't unsee what I saw, John. I need to understand what's really happening in that kitchen. Then we do this properly. No more sneaking in. We need hard proof. Video, photos, names, everything. I'll go in as a customer again. Alone." "What?" "They know you now. That old woman saw you. I'll be safer going in without you." John groaned. "Fine, but I'm wiring you with a mic and button camera, and I'll be outside. If anything goes wrong, I'll burst in." They agreed. An hour later, Jane walked into Tasty Delight with her heart pounding like a talking drum. It was quieter than before. No customers this time. Only the cook was visible, humming to himself as he washed plates. Sade wasn't there. Jane faked a soft smile. "Good afternoon." The cook turned, mildly surprised. "Afternoon, you came back?" "I've been craving your pepper soup," Jane lied. He nodded slowly. "We remember faces here." He disappeared behind the curtain. Jane took her seat and whispered softly into her hidden mic. "I'm in. Alone. He's gone to the kitchen." Then she made her move. She stood up, slipped past the curtain, and stepped into the kitchen. What she saw rooted her to the spot. There was no gas stove, no pots, no cooking utensils, just altars, 3 of them. Each had a silver bowl at the center. Candles, feathers, ground herbs, and hair. So much hair. Bundles tied together, with red thread. Some black, some brown, some clearly from underarms, a few unmistakably from pubic regions. A fourth altar had something worse, a carved wooden statue with dozens of small names scratched into it. Jane stepped closer and read, Chuka, Doris, Adebayo, Lydia, Ibuka, Jane. Her hand covered her mouth. Her name was there. Already. Then she heard footsteps. She ducked behind a stack of plastic bowls as the cook walked in, holding a bottle of palm oil and muttering in a tongue that didn't belong to any tribe she knew. She peeked through a gap. He took one of the bowls, poured oil into it, and whispered something before picking up a handful of hair and mixing it. He then dipped a cloth and wiped his face, like a priest anointing himself. Then he chanted louder. Every soul that eats, every taste that binds, every bite that obeys, we own you. Jane's knees buckled, her breathing grew loud. Then a creak. The cook turned. Who's there? Jane held her breath. She couldn't move. One shift, and he'd see her. Suddenly, a voice screamed from the main dining area. Thief! Thief day outside. The cook rushed out. It was John, causing a distraction. Jane bolted. She ran through the back, pushing open a hidden door that led to a smelly alleyway. Her legs didn't stop until she reached the major road, panting like a hunted animal. What she learned later. That night, Jane and John reviewed the footage, the chants, the bowls, the names. Jane, this isn't just cooking, this is spiritual manipulation, John said, shaking his head. She nodded. They're feeding people rituals, binding them to something. That's why the regular customers looked so lifeless. They weren't just eating, they were submitting. And now your name is on that altar. Jane's throat tightened. What does that mean? It means they're tracking you. They've marked you. Her voice trembled. Then we expose them. Fast. The warning gets worse. But before they could act, John's house was broken into. His camera, memory cards, and laptop were stolen. Only his old camcorder survived because he had hidden it in his wardrobe. The next morning, Jane found a note tucked under her apartment door. Some food is not meant to be digested. Keep your curiosity on a diet, or you'll be our next ingredient. Her hands shook. She turned the note over. A single curl of black armpit hair was taped to the back. Jane couldn't eat for days. Her name had been carved on a shrine. Her stomach had consumed something laced with dark rituals, and now threats were arriving like takeaway orders. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. This was war. She and John sat on her bed in silence. The last remaining footage was backed up in 3 different locations, but their fear grew heavier by the day. We need help, Jane finally said. Real help. The police visit. The next morning, they headed to the local police station in Surulere with copies of the photos and audio from the kitchen ritual. Jane's voice trembled as she explained everything to the officer on duty. The inspector, a bald man with a massive mustache, listened without blinking. You say they cook with armpit hair? He asked slowly. Yes, Jane said. And your name was carved on a shrine? Yes, we have footage. He leaned back in his chair. You people of nowadays, always cooking up drama. Jane's face flushed. I am not making this up. People are being manipulated. I ate there. Something is wrong. The officer scratched his chin and whispered, I know the place. I eat there sometimes. John and Jane froze. The man leaned forward. My sister, I'll give you advice. Leave that matter. That kind of thing. Even we, police, no day carry and play. You don't fight spirits with phone camera. But you're the law, Jane said, desperate. He smiled, slow and chilling. The law, no day enter, where shrine day reign. As they walked out, Jane's knees almost gave out. The system was compromised. The offer? 2 nights later, Jane received a message from a strange number. 2 million naira. Your silence. Final offer. Meet behind Mount Zion Church at midnight. Jane showed John. They're trying to buy me off now. John shook his head. They know you're close to blowing this up. That means you're a threat. Then I need to be louder. Jane decided to tell just one more person. Her cousin, Amaka, who worked as a journalist. Amaka had always been supportive, and she had connections with an online news platform. She invited her over the next day and spilled everything. Amaka listened, wide-eyed. Jane, this is insane, but I believe you. Jane smiled for the first time in days. I need you to help me publish it. Spread it everywhere. I got you, Amaka said, hugging her. But that night, Jane received another message. Your cousin works for us. Nice try. You should have stayed quiet. Her heart dropped. She called Amaka immediately. The line was off. John tried to trace the phone. Nothing. The next day, Amaka's apartment was empty. Her phone, laptop, gone. Even her neighbors said she had traveled. Jane knew what that meant. They got to her. The fire. The final blow came on Sunday evening. Tasty Delight caught fire. It was all over the news. Mysterious fire destroys local restaurant. Owner missing. No casualties. Jane and John rushed to the scene. The building was gone. Nothing but ash and charred beams. Sad, the waitress, was nowhere to be found. The cook? Gone. The old woman? Gone. But the smell, that same thick aroma, lingered in the air. Jane sent the last surviving video to an anonymous blog known for exposing dark secrets in Nigeria. They published the footage with a full article under the title, "The Secret Ingredient, Rituals in Our Food." It went viral. People debated. Some said it was fake. Others swore they had eaten there and experienced strange dreams. But the restaurant never reopened. And Jane? She disappeared from the internet for 3 months. She left Lagos and moved to Akwa Ibom under a different name. But she kept one thing with her. John's footage backed up on a small USB drive and worn like a pendant on her neck, just in case. 6 months later, in another part of the city, a new restaurant opened. Same dull cream color, same faint red curtains, no signboard, just a scent, deep, rich, ancient, and in the kitchen, a new cook, scratching his armpit, holding a silver bowl.